Well, hello, and welcome to the Digging Deeper podcast, where our hope is to just dig a little bit deeper into that week's sermon, so that way we might dig it a little bit deeper into our hearts. We are so glad that y'all joined us here today. If y'all don't know, my name is Chris Brown, and I'm the associate pastor here.
My name is Jacob Belding. I'm the connections minister.
And I'm Judah, the guy in the chair.
He's back.
Yep.
Are you feeling better?
Much better.
Yeah. Judah was sick on Sunday. So you haven't heard the sermon, or did you watch it online?
No.
How dare you?
At least he's honest.
He's sleeping.
He was sleeping because he was sick.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like it's 8 degrees outside. That's a kind of sick.
Yeah. Yeah. You tell me, do you believe Judah? Do you think he's actually sick, or do you think, or was actually sick, or was he just faking it so he didn't have to get out in the cold? Do you have anything to say for yourself before they make their comments?
Please believe me.
Okay. Anyways, we are glad that y'all have joined us here today. This past Sunday was a little bit different because I got to preach. Once a month, I get the opportunity to preach, and that was my Sunday. So, as customary, I don't review my own sermons or recap my own sermons. Jacob does, and then I judge him on how good he did. So, Jacob, take it away.
Yes. So the passage was out of Philippians chapter 3, and the whole point of the sermon was to focus.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you didn't even have to listen to the sermon to know that because it was on all the bulletins.
Yeah.
So if you got your bulletin, which I didn't actually, but that's okay. I saw them.
But you still know.
Yeah, that's right. It's about focus. And so the sermon was really about how to hone in our focus on what God wants us to do. And so there were 3 questions to ask, 3 questions that you gave us to ask ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, am I focusing on myself? Am I focusing on me? That was the first one, right? We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
The second was, am I focusing on today? Am I worried about today? Am I focused about today? Or am I worried about things that may or may not come in the future, things that are outside of my control? And then the third question, am I focusing on God's kingdom?
Mm-hmm.
Am I focusing on God's kingdom? Yes. So that was basically that's the sermon in a nutshell. Like,
It's getting better. It's getting better. I feel your passion for it welling up in your words.
well, what I appreciated about this one was, it was, I mean, it was pretty clear. Not to say that the others weren't. But,
This one I could actually listen to.
I could follow.
The other ones, golly.
Man, it was tough, but no, it was. Like I said, the outline and everything, and the recap made it easy on me this week.
It's pretty straightforward. It's definitely more of a practical sermon than a theological one, which oddly enough, practical one's actually a little bit harder to write for me because it's not just one singular text that you're like unpacking.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times it's multiple text. And anyways, we'll get into all that. But
It's kind of like teaching a small group on a topical study, right? You've got to. It's not like you're just in this one passage. Like, especially if you're writing it, you're like, okay. So, for example, if we're going to talk about the Holy Spirit, it's like, well, there's an awful lot to talk about there. Where do we start? And trying to zero it down and zero it in makes it difficult.
yeah. Fun fact for y'all and for anyone out there listening, this sermon was actually meant to be preached in October. And it just kept getting delayed down the rabbit hole. And so probably half of, or I don't know, probably a quarter of this sermon was written back in October. And then decided to preach on something different in October, so I moved it to November. Decided to preach something different in November, so I moved it to December. Decided to preach something different on December, so here it is in January.
That's surprising because I thought it had a kind of a New Year's feel to it.
It did. So the original intent was whenever it was. No, sorry. Yeah, no. It was the same intent. It just, it actually ended up applying better to the new year because, that's when everyone, thinks about.
Yeah. More introspective about things.
And, where are we going? Where are we moving to? And, so on and so forth. So yeah, fun fact for anyone out there: we sometimes write 2 sermons in a week, and then
Table one.
Yeah.
Give it a month or 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the passage, the passage at the beginning is Philippians 3:18 through 20. So I figure we can go on and read that.
Sure. Now this one, with it being topical, there's multiple passages,
Yeah.
and this was actually the passage for the last point.
Oh, should we save it then?
So we can save it if you want.
Let's talk about that opening illustration then.
Yeah.
Shall we?
Sure.
I liked that one.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Because of the tennis, or because you were chasing girls you had crushes on?
So I didn't. So I also played tennis when I was in school. I started when I was in 8th grade, and then played all the way up through high school. I didn't join the tennis team because there were girls involved. Now, once I was there were girls, and that was fun. That was
Like,
cool.
I want to play mixed.
Yeah,
doubles.
mixed doubles. I did play mixed doubles for a little bit, and anyway, but no. What I did in, I think it was 8th grade, I did try out and audition for the drama team because of a girl.
Yeah.
And it was Wizard of Oz, and I got the role of being the guard at the gate of the Emerald City. Mm-hmm. And that went absolutely nowhere with that girl.
Nice.
And so anyway, yeah. But I've been there. Yeah. I can relate a little bit.
Judah, just in case you don't know, since you didn't watch the sermon, I talked about how I joined the tennis team because I had a crush on a girl, and then I ended up dating, but I fell in love with tennis. Me and the girl eventually broke up, but
makes sense.
yeah.
So what grade was this?
It was a sophomore year of high school.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
And so I remember I went over there, and I think I had a racket that we picked up from a thrift store for like $1.
Yeah.
And I really did just fall in love with it. I played for hours and hours and hours every day.
Yeah, we used to meet up in the summertime whenever we weren't in school playing, and we'd bring out a big, it wasn't a boom box, but somebody had some kind of a stereo, and we just blast music and go out in the evenings, turn the lights on, and play.
I got my whole youth group to do it, and so we would meet on Wednesday, for church, and then everyone went straight to the tennis courts after church on Wednesday to go play. Judah, did you have a thought?
My parents played tennis.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. I put out an appeal that if anyone wants to play tennis, to let me know, because I haven't got to play in a long time. And so your parents didn't say anything.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Do you know that there's going to be tennis in heaven?
Do you got a verse for this?
I didn't pull it up yet, but it's, what is it? Psalm 23. I will dwell in the courts of the Lord forever.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yes. Anyways, Judah, have you ever done something because you had a crush on a girl?
I did go to my sister's ballet practices because I kind of liked a girl and wanted to go to the.
It wasn't your
ballet
sister,
practice.
right?
No.
Okay, few.
It's in Arkansas.
Yeah.
No, she was there at the practices.
Yes. It's a different girl. Okay.
Different girl.
Good. Few.
Right.
Yeah.
But if I just showed up at some random ballet practice, that would be awkward. So it had to
That
be
would
my
be
sister.
awkward.
Your sister was your wingman.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Well, anyways, the whole purpose of the illustration was to hone in on the thought of when I did poorly in tennis, it was because I took my eyes off the ball, right? That was the whole concept. Keep your eye on the ball or you're going to, what do you call it when it hits the frame? I could not remember what that's called.
Just call it just shanking it.
Shanking, yeah. You'd shank it or, hit it right off center and it'll go where you don't want it to go.
That's what you were looking at. You were looking at the girl over there.
Yeah,
I'm playing the tournament. I'm doing poorly. Why?
No.
She's over there. She needs to be back behind me. So.
I think by that tournament she had already graduated.
Oh, God. Oh, she was older.
She's older.
Oh,
yeah,
dang.
1 year older than
All
me.
right, all
Yeah.
right.
She's also in the drum line, and so that's how we
yeah.
first met.
Gotcha.
Just through the drum line, and then
More extracurricular
yeah,
time.
yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
but-
So I liked it. keeping your eye on the ball because especially having played tennis, yes, you have to do that, and it's not like football or baseball where you look to where you want the ball in that sport to go, or basketball, or literally any other sport.
Yeah, the only other one would be like baseball.
Yeah,
where because like in football, you're
for
in
the bat.
For the bat, yeah.
I'm thinking about throwing,
for throwing it or like shooting basketball or whatever. Your hands are in full contact with it the entire time, and so you can just use all your other senses to do it. With hitting a baseball or hitting a tennis ball or anything that you hit, in that sense, you're dealing with a moving target now, and so as the target moves, you have to watch it, so that way again you can make those fine-tuned micro adjustments to do it. And you wouldn't think so. Okay, you see the ball, it's coming here, and you're going to meet it here. You would think, oh, I can reasonably understand where that ball's going to go. I don't need to look at it, but it really does make a difference.
Oh, yeah.
To like, get that hand-eye coordination together as it goes. Yeah.
Well, it depends on the kind of spin that's put on it too, and is it going to be up here? Is it going to be down there? Or is it going to lurch off to one side or the other? Like you have to watch it because that ball's liable to move on you, and it's going to move a lot. But it's also kind of like football. So I've been coaching this third, fourth grade flag league, and trying to teach them how to catch well, because they're in the league. They're wanting us to pass. You can only run it like one time in a possession, and so these kids, the ball will be like up over their heads, and they'll just kind of like stick their hands up, and it's like, why you missed that, right? It's because you didn't watch the ball go all the way into your hands. Like, get your head up and look, and then the next one comes and they catch it. It's like, oh, look at that! You kept your eye on the ball and you caught it. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Which flowed nicely into the first question. Right?
So sorry, real quick before we move on. My daughter is a great example of this in getting dressed in the morning. So I'll try to like get her dressed, with her pants, and she's like watching the TV, and she's like, I'm like, okay, put your foot in, and she's like moving her foot all around everywhere except where it's supposed to go.
Might as well be blind.
And I'm like, Lottie, focus.
Right. Hey.
And she'll finally like look down, and there's where the pant leg is.
Joni's the exact same way. This morning, TV's on. I'm like, hey, it's time to get dressed, and it's like, might as well be trying to dress like somebody that's in a vegetative state, right? It's all dead weight. Like, come on.
Yeah. Anyways, okay. Yeah.
Yes. Which brings us to the first point. Am I focusing on myself? And I'm pretty good at focusing on myself.
Most people are.
Yeah, we're naturally inclined to be selfish, and you mentioned that even in the service. But that's not what that question really means.
No, it's not a, because if you were to look into like the typical like self-help things, it's like you need to focus on yourself more.
Right, self-care.
And I kind of paraphrased, quoted Francis Chan in this, where he's like, you need to love yourself more. And Francis Chan's like, I think you love yourself fine. I think you're fine on that.
Exactly.
That's not the thing. But no, it's not that question in the sense of like, you need more self-care or things like that, which may be true to a certain extent. Because a lot of times when we do focus on ourselves, what we think is like care isn't actually care.
Right.
It's more just indulgence.
Right.
On vices and whatnot.
It'd be like sitting down at the dinner table with like a, whatever kind of dinner that you can imagine. And the whole family's there, the kids are there. And it's like, well, Chris did say that I should maybe, ask the question, am I focusing on myself? Like, you kids, you actually don't need that spaghetti and meatballs. I'm going to have that. Like, this is all about me and myself, right? But that's not it.
Not it. It's not a selfish type of question, not a self-seeking type of question. It's more of, are you focusing on what you need to do rather than what other people need to do?
Right. Because it's easy. It's easy to do that, right? To do the opposite, rather. Yeah. To say, especially, I don't know if you've noticed, but anytime that, there's sort of a light that gets shown on you, maybe something you're not doing well, or even your sin or things that have happened, even in the past, it's really, really tempting to say, oh, yeah, but this one over here, what about...
well, that's, it's kind of the root of all gossip, right?
Yeah.
We may not consciously think this, but subconsciously, gossip makes ourselves feel better, right? We're talking about other people's failures to make us not feel so bad about our failures, right? And it's easy to do.
Yeah, it is. And I liked the TLC examples that you had. As soon as you said the first one,
the hoarders.
Hoarders. Hoarders. Like, that makes me feel better about my house, but also makes me want to clean.
Dude, I watch this YouTube channel called Midwest Magic Cleaning. And it's this guy who in his own personal business owns a cleaning business, but for YouTube he'll find basically like hoarder homes in his area to clean for free, and in exchange, like, can I just make a video about it? And so it's just these 40-minute videos of him just cleaning these hoarder homes, and I will watch them and to get inspired to go clean my own home. And so sometimes we can use those shows and stuff to like give us inspiration to work on our own junk, and then sometimes it has a reverse effect.
And that's where the second one, as soon as you said hoarders, my brain went to my 600-pound life. And then you said it, and I'm like, so that's one where it's first off, I love the doctor on that show.
Oh yeah, he's great. Have you seen his like gold stethoscope? He comes in. So it's the same. Judah, have you ever seen My 600-Pound Life?
Never.
Okay, so it basically goes through the same.
The same story.
The same story every time. There's this person who is very, very overweight, to the point like debilitatingly overweight, where they can hardly function. And it goes through the story of, what's their backstory? How did they get to this point? Like, what's their normal diet and lifestyle looks like? And then they always go and meet with this doctor. It's the same doctor every time.
He's down in Houston.
Yeah. Same doctor every time. And it's basically a weight loss doctor and like liposuction doctor. And
gastro.
That's right. Yeah.
He does a gastric sleeve or whatever.
Gastric bypass.
Yes. Yeah, that's it.
I forgot. Yeah. And then they'll do liposuction if they need it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy right there.
Yes.
So it's the same guy every time, and he's like so brutal with them.
Well, he's got an accent, right? He's clearly not from the United States.
Yeah.
He's clearly not from Texas, and I think it's part of the reason that he can get away with it is because he's clearly a foreigner and from somewhere else, but absolutely no nonsense. This guy, and I love it. It's hilarious. Like there's even clips on all over the place, but there's one where. So they'll go in for their initial weigh-in, and you weigh 659 pounds. We want you to be down to 620 by the next visit in a month, and that's a lot, right? So basically, it means like they're fasting and eating like celery sticks.
Yeah.
And so they'll come back. This one woman comes back, and she's actually gained weight, and he's like just ripping into her, just. She's, I just need to eat. He's like, you're not going to waste away. You ate the next 5 years' food already. You're going to be okay. And just no nonsense, like at all. Yeah, and it's that guy is entertaining. Yeah, for no other reason to watch this show for that guy.
Oh, and it's great. And I don't know when this happened and what season, but I remember watching one of them. And he comes in with this like gold stethoscope around his neck. And I'm like, this dude's just flaunting his money. Judah, if you can find that image, we'll throw it up there at some point.
And he's kind of like Dr. Phil in a way. Like, a little bit. Half of his job is to tell people to get real, and then the other half is to do surgery. Yeah, which is it's just great.
Am I misremembering? Is there a gold one?
Maybe.
Yeah, if we can find it, we'll throw it up there.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So, it's, but that one is one that makes me feel better about myself.
Yeah.
For sure. And then, Dave Ramsey on finances, same.
Yeah, when I first started listening to Dave Ramsey, I'm like, this is like really good advice. And then it gets to the point where you know everything about Dave Ramsey. Yep. And so you're not really listening for advice anymore. Now you're listening just to hear like the wild stories.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, on my Facebook Reels the past week or so, I've been getting more Dave Ramsey.
Oh, yeah.
You're $300,000 in debt, and you're talking about buying a rent home? No. And he just, same thing, right? Tough love,
Yeah.
kind of deal.
Yep.
You called in to ask me that? Come on, man.
Yep.
It's it make you feel a little bit better, but also can be motivating, in a way. It just depends, I guess. But
so very easy.
Yeah.
To shift our focus off of what we need to do onto what others, and there's platforms to help us do that. Even social media, probably to an extent, can shift our focus onto other people in a positive way or even in a negative way. But
I like how you brought it back to Scripture in John 21. Right?
I love the story.
Oh, isn't it a great story?
Yeah.
And I love how it ends with Jesus saying, "Hey, you follow me, and despite the fact that basically you're going to die for me, you follow me. This is your job." And then he looks over at John. What about him? What about this guy? And Jesus is like, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, what's it to you?
It's hard to see inflection and emotion in the text because it's text. So it's hard to know exactly how Jesus responded to this in terms of his tone. It could have been like, hey man, you don't need to worry about him. You need to worry about yourself. I like to think though that he was like an annoyed dad at this point.
It's like Dave Ramsey.
Yeah, it's like if you tell your kids to go clean your room, and they're like, "Oh, what about them? They don't need to clean their room." And I imagine he's responding like an annoyed dad here of like, "Don't worry about him. I told you to do this. Go do it."
Right, exactly. Well, and I don't know. This one's kind of it's interesting because Jesus, like you said in your sermon, had just got done reinstating Peter. Like Peter, I mean, imagine how he felt and like where he must have been to know that, he goes from the upper room to where, hey, Jesus, I'm going to go. I'll die with you. I'll fight for you. And Jesus is like, you're going to deny me 3 times, right? He sure enough does. And then, right, Jesus is crucified. And I mean, the place that Peter would have been in, like, you would think that there would be like just a tinge more humility, especially right after he's been reinstated. Like, who gets, not everybody gets that chance, right?
Yeah.
Not in the same way, anyway. We got Peter that we know of. And so, man, Jesus tells him, hey, you are going to serve me in this way. Follow me. And then he's like, what about him? It's like, dude, it seems a little tone deaf, but we can all be like that. Sometimes.
Yeah, I love it. Which I kind of mentioned this in passing. I wanted to mention this a little bit more into depth because it's almost, if you don't know the relationship between Peter and John, then you may not quite understand what's going on there. But you see all throughout they were clearly close to each other, and they almost had this like little sibling rivalry. They weren't siblings, but you almost had that rivalry going on between them. John 20, a great passage where Peter and John were going to the empty tomb to see what was going on there. And this is John is writing the book of John. So this is in John 20. At that, Peter and the other disciple, which is John, went out heading for the tomb. The two were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and got to the tomb first. He's talking about himself.
Yeah.
Like John never refers to himself by name in his gospel. He always says, the disciple or the disciple that Jesus loved or whatever. And so you've got John writing about the event of them running to the tomb together. And he just has to throw in there, by the way, the other disciple got there first.
Basically,
right?
I'm faster.
Yeah.
It's a humble brag.
Yeah. And so you have these like two just kind of nipping at each other. And so that's why I imagine Peter, Jesus tells Peter this, and Peter in his like kind of like fun rivalry with John is like, what about this guy? like am I going to die better than him or whatnot? And that's, I imagine Jesus was just annoyed with the question.
Yeah,
and
probably.
It's like, just focus on yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. Jesus is like, look, I was just crucified, buried, resurrected, and you're worried about that.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Yep. But the application for us, am I focused on myself rather than others? And then, what is God calling me to do with my life this next year in 2024? Right. This is what we got a glimpse at what Jesus was calling Peter to do. So what is God calling us to do? I thought that was a great way to to apply it.
Yeah.
Right. It's a great question. Really, that's another question. Right. What is God calling me to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's a lot of things. Like you said, you left it pretty open. Though the suggestions that you gave, I liked. It's not what your spouse is called to do, your boss, your family. But, is God calling you to deal with a particular sin that's been that you haven't been able to shed yet? Or, what about digging deeper in your relationship with God? What about getting more connected, joining a small group, right? Serving here at the church, those sorts of things. I thought those were all good suggestions and good thoughts.
Yeah, and all this, a caveat to this is, this isn't to say that you shouldn't ever be concerned with what other people are called to do.
Right.
Like your spouse, for example. There is an element that you should be concerned with what your spouse is doing.
Yeah.
Right. If your spouse is like going way off the deep end, then you should probably try to intervene in that. Or if you, have friends that you're in community with that you see diving down into sin, the Bible calls us to encourage them, admonish them, hold them accountable. And so it's not a matter of like you focus on you and never think about anyone else. It's just don't get distracted with it. It's just
don't focus on everyone else so much that you're neglecting to look at you.
Yeah, control the controllables.
Yeah.
I would always say affect change where you can. Mm-hmm. And so it's just so easy to almost get into a victim mindset of like, oh, I would do this if my boss would just go this way. It's like, well, okay, let's concede, okay, your boss could do better. But don't worry about that. You're not in control of your boss. You're in control of you. What can you do better? Your spouse, like, there's things that your spouse may do that annoys you. And you're like, so focused on them, like, well, my life would just be so much better if they could just get it together. And it's like, okay, well, you're not in control of your spouse. What are you in control of? What can you do? And so it's just always kind of pulling it back to, okay, what am I responsible for? And then move forward in those things.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And your sin, you are completely responsible for your sin.
100%.
And so maybe you need to work on your annoying habits.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And if we're talking about spouses, right, if we're both doing those things, right, taking care of sin, pursuing righteousness, then that's going to lead to a better relationship, right, even there.
Well, even in things like, here's a really practical example. I'm pretty type A in my organization at home, and Randy's pretty type B. And so I can get just really annoyed at her type B-ness and things being left out and whatnot. Or I can ask myself, okay, what can I do to help this? And so, okay, how can I make systems of organization to make it easier for her to organize and then communicate and help that? And so it's kind of like, even in the things that, I might be concerned with, what could she do? It's bringing it back to, okay, what can I do to help this?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. I know. So last week we were talking about dishes, and I was talking about recently how my wife has been cooking, but then she'll leave the skillets, right, a mess and everything, and we did our re-engage homework, and we actually talked about that.
Oh, nice.
Yesterday, and so basically, what's been happening recently, and it hadn't been going on forever, but the skillets will get left there, and then I'll come along and go on and clean them up. Right, I'm tired of them being out. And
they're soaking, and you gotta let them soak.
Sometimes they'll soak. Other times, like the other day, I think I was telling you that I think there were 3 skillets that were out, and it wasn't just little messes in there. It was like one was eggs that had been caked on there, another was sausage it was sausage that had been cooked, and that leaves a mess. I don't remember what the third one was, but I'm like, my gosh, there's a whole 3 of them up here. So I'm over there and just scrubbing away and finally, get them clean. I think it took me about 20 minutes just to do the one with eggs on it. It was it was a mess. And then the very next day, so I get them all put away. The very next day, she makes eggs again and then leaves it. And I'm like, I'm not doing it again. I'm going to leave it and then let her do it, right? Yeah. I'm worried about her and what she's doing. And so I went on and left it. And she finally did get around to cleaning it. So we were talking about it. I said, yeah, so, this is one of the things that, it kind of like irritated me the other day. And she's like, oh, really? Because, I was thinking to myself just how nice of an arrangement that this has been. That, I cook, he cleans. And I'm like, you know what? You're probably right. It's probably a fair trade and I should fix my attitude about it. But even having conversations, it's first off, it's funny. And then I don't know how she'd feel that I talked about this on the podcast. But, anyway, maybe she'll go watch it now.
Yep. And not to get too deep into marital communication, but usually that's what happens is like it's easy if you get frustrated to build up a whole narrative in your mind of how they're harming you, like actively trying to harm you, and then like you bring it up and they're like, oh, you're upset. You're upset about that? Yeah. Like what? Like I didn't even realize there was a dish left or whatnot. And so it's most of the time there's not nefarious motives.
Right.
It's just we're just seeing past each other a little bit on what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyways,
I just thought it was funny. Her thoughts on it. Oh, I thought I've been really enjoying that. And it's like, well, I'm glad I've been making your life easier.
Yeah.
I need to fix my attitude a little bit and move on. Worry about me.
Yeah.
Worry about me and what I can do. Right? What can I do? I can do the dishes. Right? Yep.
Yep. So focus on yourself.
Yes.
Yep.
Which brings us to the second question when it comes into honing in on what God would have us to do.
I'm out of coffee. I'm sad.
Yeah, I'm almost there too. It is sad. The second question, am I focusing on today? Am I focusing on today? And then you brought up the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 6. Sufficient is today for its own troubles. Here it is. Therefore, don't be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. And I like that one. Sufficient. Sufficient.
Yeah, the ESV and the King James translate that the exact same way.
I noticed that whenever you said it in the sermon, I'm like, oh, look at that. They agree this time. That's good. Not that they don't normally, but some of the wording a lot of time will be different.
Yeah, CSB puts a little bit more in today's language. Each day has enough trouble of its own.
Yeah. Which is, it basically says the same thing.
Yep.
But yeah, isn't that the truth? There's enough stuff going on. Today.
Yeah.
Don't need
you would think, in theory, we don't want problems outside today, but in practice we do. Like if we're constantly pulling tomorrow's problems into today. Yeah.
Like, is she going to clean the skillet tomorrow? I don't know. We'll have to wait and find out. But yeah, it could be anything. And I like the you talked about the paralysis by analysis.
Yeah.
Where you're so worried and concerned about this or that or whatever it happens to be that you actually do nothing.
Yeah.
And you're just staying still because...
Well, and that's how you know, I think we've talked about this before. So like anxiety, people always get upset if you talk about anxiety in like a negative, like you can control it kind of way, because for some reason our society has designated anxiety outside of your control. And when I read scripture, it doesn't seem to approach it that way. But there's different types of anxiety. What anxiety is a normal, natural response to an emergency going on in your life. Dr. John Deloney, psychologist. Actually, I don't know if he's a psychologist. I don't know. Anyways, counselor, therapist, says anxiety is just it's an alarm. It's a fire alarm. And if the fire alarm is going off in your system, it could be for good reason. If there's a fire in your house, you're probably going to be filled with anxiety because it's your body telling you there's an emergency. You need to go do it. If you lost your kid, anxiety is going to fill you because your kid is lost and your body's telling you go find your kid.
I'm just imagining a world where there is absolutely no anxiety, and it's like you're sitting at the kitchen table, the house is on fire. It's like the meme, like, this is fine.
This is fine.
I'm not worried about it.
Yeah. And so that's not the anxiety that this is talking about.
Right.
Because what that anxiety does is it's a normal response in your body that pushes you to solve a problem, right? You're in a house with a fire, anxiety clicks up, gets you out of the house. You lost your kid, anxiety clicks up, you go find your kid, right? the anxiety that this is talking about is anxiety about things that you have no control over,
Right.
things that aren't even happening right now. And whenever your alarm goes off, it's the same trigger inwardly. It's the same fire alarm in your system going off. And when it goes off, your body has nothing to go solve. Because there's literally, the problem is made up.
Right.
It's a made up problem that you have no control over. Or it may not be made up, but it's a problem that you don't have control over.
Yeah.
And that you can't affect any change in it. Or maybe you can affect change, but you can't do it for another 4 weeks
Right.
from now. And so your body kicks up all these sensors inside of it. And your body wants to go solve a problem, but there's no problem to actually solve. And so what does it do? It just internalizes all that into that state of paralysis,
Right.
Because there's your body just starts to tunnel into nothing because it can't do anything.
There's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
With it.
And so that's one thing to point out here in that. But yeah,
Yes. Yeah. Agreed. And that's where, our response has to be to trust that God has it. Right? That He's got it, that He's in control. And like I said, and I think you said it, it's easier said than done to do that. Like,
Yeah.
that's tough, right? Because we want to be in control of our lives and the things that go on with us and then around us, and, what life looks like. Those, all sorts of things, all sorts of ways to cut that. But it's something that we have to understand is God in His grace did not make us in control of everything.
Yeah.
Which is good. Imagine if we were. It would be a mess, right? He's in control. And so we have to trust that He's got it.
yeah. And so there's some things in here. So an example I wanted to give, but I just didn't have time, was so like insurance. I hate insurance stuff. Randy has type 1 diabetes. So every year there's constantly like insurance stuff going on. And then this past year, Judson had to have multiple surgeries for some infections. And in all of that, there was like a lot of like processing, like paperwork and making sure bills got to where they need to go and things are paid as they're supposed to be paid. And I remember I would sit and I would do everything that I could do. So if we're asking the question, Jesus said, focus on today, not on tomorrow. And so if we put that 24-hour rule on it of, okay, thought comes in my mind, okay, there's stuff going on with insurance. Okay, what can I do about that today? Okay, here's what I can do. I can process the bills, get them submitted, make sure everything's paid that needs to be paid, and everything on my end is set.
Yeah.
I would do all those things, and then there's just a waiting game. Right? It's like I submit to the insurance company, and now I just have to wait for 5 days for them to even respond, probably another 14 days for them to actually make a decision on it. And so it's literally just a waiting game of I can't do anything more. So what should I do in that moment? I should just say, God's got this. I've done everything that I could do, compartmentalize it away, and move on with my life. What do? I just sit there and think about it over and over and over again. I think about all the different possibilities that could be. Okay, well, what if they do cover it? Okay, here's what if they don't cover it. What if it ends up being this much? What if it ends up being this much? And I just play out all these scenarios and just reprocess over and over again, perseverating a thought over and over again for no reason. There's literally no new information to deal with. It's just waiting on it. But instead of compartmentalizing it away and trusting, I just dive into despair.
Yeah. Well, it's tough because, there's things that like I want the box checked. Like, I want that to be done. I'm ready for it to be done. I want to check the box so I can move on. And I never have to think about this again until the next time, right? It's like it's finished and I'm done with it. Let's move on. It's that waiting around and, you're kind of in suspense and not sure. That makes that, well, it's just impossible to be able to just check off and move on from. And I don't know, is that, I don't know if that's like more of a, like, men we do that more, like we're more of check the box and then it's done and move on, or
probably so. There's probably different facets of it. Certainly both men and women would have the struggle with anxiety.
Yeah.
It might just be in different facets. So men, we may just want it to be done, and for women it may be, I don't know,
Something else.
I'm not a woman.
We'll have to ask one.
Yeah, we'll have to ask one.
Yeah.
If you're a woman watching and you want to let us know what you're anxious about, put in the comments.
That's right. Let us know.
Let the whole world know. But it's compartmentalizing. And compartmentalizing sounds overly simplistic. Because when you're in the middle of like just full panic mode, if you tell someone, just stop thinking about it, well,
that doesn't help.
That doesn't help a whole lot. Is that the solution to the problem? Okay, here's the line that I'll go down. Okay, anxious thought comes into my head. Okay, what can I do about this? Have I done something? Have I done those things that I can do? Yes. Okay, now it's just a waiting game. Okay, is there anything else I need to do? No. Okay, compartmentalize it. Okay, I can't do anything about it. Tell myself what's true and put it aside. And what will happen is it's almost like a puppy that hasn't been trained yet. It'll just start gnawing back on me. And like a minute later, it'll just gnaw back. And I'll be like, I'm anxious. Why am I anxious? And I have to like go through the entire process again and, put the puppy, back down. And then, maybe it might be 3 minutes later now. Puppies start gnawing back up. I have to go through the whole process again, put it back down. And you almost have to just retrain your body. Okay, I'm not going to worry about this. Mm-hmm. And you just have to just keep fighting it. And, it's hard.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've found, too, is anytime that there's anxiety that has crept up and is just like weighing on me, being around other people and
just
that helps a lot.
Literally just getting your mind off of it.
Distracting yourself, and it's like, hey, the world's not ending, right?
Yeah,
like, and it could be like you don't even have to talk about what's making you anxious, right? It's just, hey, let's just have a conversation, and we're talking about this over here, that over there, and and it's like the world's not on fire.
Yeah, absolutely,
so it's okay.
COVID was a perfect example of this. So when COVID first happened, everyone, didn't go to work and stayed at home. You're in your house. You haven't seen any other people for like, a couple of days at least. And then you're being flooded with the world's on fire. Everyone's sick. If you go out and even talk to someone, you're going to the hospital. And by the way, there's no beds available and all that stuff.
In fact, not only are there no beds, but they are bringing in portable morgues outside the hospital to store all of the bodies. And it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so you're just filled with this, right? And then I remember the first time I went out to like the grocery store or something, and I realized, life is still going. Like life is moving on. This isn't, not that it wasn't like a big deal, but it wasn't as big of a deal as they were portraying it. And just getting out and just seeing life is, the world is still spinning. Aside from whatever problem you have, does help a ton. But moving it back into, because it wasn't just a purely like anxious topic, but it's just more of like, okay, what are you supposed to do today? Don't get caught up in tomorrow. And this doesn't mean don't plan for the future,
right?
As well. So like if we were to like talk about research papers, right? If I was to take it to its purest form, I've got paper due in 3 months in school. It's not due today, so I'm not going to focus on today, right? I was living by Jesus' words long before I ever read this passage. And so I don't need to focus about today. And then till it gets to the night before, okay, it's due. Okay, now I need to focus on it because it's due today.
That's right. It's, on writing those, you have to wait for the right, like, mood. You have to be in the mood. And the mood is last minute panic. And then you get done real quick.
Yeah. So you could take an overly spiritual, not what Jesus was saying approach to this to justify not doing the paper before you need to.
Right.
That's not what this is getting at. Because there are things that have to do with tomorrow that you can do today. Right. And so if a paper is due a week from now and you have anxiety or worry about that, you could just compartmentalize away. But if you ask the question, okay, what can I do about this today? Well, there is something you can do about today. You can go ahead and start reading the book that you need to read, or you can make an outline. Doesn't mean you have to do the entire paper today, but you can do chunks of it and kind of parcel out and plan. Retirement. People may be worried about Oh, am I going to have enough money to retire? Okay, well, that's not today, so don't worry about it. Well, you may be able to do something about it today, though.
Yeah.
You can start contributing to a retirement account. It doesn't mean that you are trying to like solve tomorrow's problems, but you're just, okay, what can I do about this today?
Yeah, you're
And
setting
go do it.
yourself up for success down the road whenever that
Yeah.
time comes.
Yeah. And so that's a big element of not just being productive and focusing on what God has called you to do, but also preemptively taking care of worry down the road. Because if you just constantly kick the bucket or kick the can down the road, you're creating a ton of anxiety in the future and anxiety now because you're not actually solving any problems. And so there's an element of, this doesn't mean don't plan for the future. It means
Right.
plan for the future and do what you can do about today and then leave the rest for tomorrow.
Right.
In the plan.
Right, exactly. All right, that's good. I like it. And it would probably lead to lots of anxiety if you did constantly kick the bucket.
Yeah. 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 Yes.
I'm dying over and over. It's like,
Yes,
oh my gosh,
that
when's it
would.
coming next?
There's a great, I can't remember if it was in this book or in an interview, but Jordan Peterson talks about procrastination. And he says, you can sacrifice today for tomorrow, but you can't sacrifice tomorrow for today. Which is usually what we do. If there's something that we need to do, let's take the writing the paper. I could start writing the paper today and get it done so that way I can relax tomorrow, right? So you're sacrificing today's time to be able to relax tomorrow. But usually we don't do that. We sacrifice tomorrow's time to be able to relax today. And he says you actually can't do that because even though you're not dealing with it today, it's still on your mind.
Right.
And so if you sacrifice today, then your rest tomorrow is complete rest. But
Right.
if you sacrifice tomorrow, then your rest today can't be as complete as it actually needs to be because it's still on your mind.
Yeah, that's that would be the interest from borrowing fun from tomorrow for today.
Yeah. So if you, it's basically, are you taking out a loan or are you putting money into a savings account? If you're putting money into a savings account, it's building interest for tomorrow. If you're taking out a loan, then you're paying interest on tomorrow.
Yeah, it's backwards.
It's a good thought.
Yeah. Oh, it was pretty good.
Was that yours? Or
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. Yeah. Look, I like it.
Yeah. Nailed it. All right, so let's recap so far. How to hone in our focus on what God wants us to do. Number one, first question, am I focusing on myself? Number two, am I focusing on today? And then finally, this brings us to number three, am I focusing on God's kingdom?
Yep.
I like this one.
Yeah.
Yes.
It kind of ties it all in together.
does. This is the cherry on top.
Yeah, one of my fears of doing topical sermons is that it can come across like a TED Talk. And I don't want it to come across like a TED Talk. I think the Bible's uber practical and lots of pragmatic, here's how God designed for you to live. This is what's going to lead to flourishing. I think there's tons of that in the Bible, and I think it needs to be preached. But then there's also that fear of if I preach on that, then it's going to come across like it's not spiritual at all. There's no spiritual element to it. And of course, there's all sorts of spiritual elements tied into this. But this one kind of, again, takes those practical aspects of focus on what you need to do, focus on today, and gives it that purpose of God.
Yeah, it recontextualizes
direction.
those things and what's proper for us who are believers.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And so, it does give us meaning and purpose, right? And I actually did not know that story from Leningrad, the seed bank.
It's awful, man. I read a book. So the way that chapter of that book opened up was first they ate the animals in the zoo. That was the first sentence of the chapter. It was
Those are a luxury anyway.
It's like, what is going on? And then it starts to explain the siege that's going on. And then it says the first child dies. And here's where it gets brutal, is that it recounts a story where a child died and they were actually eating the child to survive.
Wow.
And just to like give context to the brutalness of what was going on here. Anyways.
That's severe.
So yeah.
And how long did you say it lasted? 900 days?
900 days.
So basically 3 years.
Yeah.
So my immediate thought was, when you said it was that long of a siege and they're sitting on all these seeds, how come they didn't plant some?
They did. So
okay.
they did, yeah. So they actually had to like be pretty careful because Hitler actually knew about this seed bank, and apparently, obviously Hitler was very involved in like eugenics and developing the most superior race, and so this thought of having a eugenics seed bank, because they didn't only collect seeds from around the area and grow crops, but they actually I don't know if eugenics is the right word, but they did experiments to produce better crops as well. And so Hitler was very interested in the seed bank, and so, but I guess they didn't know where it was in the city because it's a giant city. It's the second largest city in Russia.
So they didn't want to just like carpet bomb the city and risk destroying that.
Sure,
so they set up a siege instead.
And so they actually had to like the scientists that ran the seed bank had to operate pretty covertly. And so they said that they would sneak outside of the city and go to the farms that they had to like plant seeds and stuff like that. So they were doing that, and they probably did eat some of the collection that they had, and that may be why things did better than it could have gone. But there was certainly probably a difference between eating a little bit to help get us by and eating enough that's actually becoming a detriment to the actual work ahead of us. So,
and it'd probably be tough, especially under siege circumstances, like to actually like. There's no way that you're able to smuggle in enough food to feed people in the second largest city in Russia at the time, right?
No,
like there's just no way.
No, and so even in the best case scenario, they're not going to be able to sustain that city with that bank. And one thing, I'm by no means a fan of communism, but one good thing when communism works, quote unquote, the way it's supposed to, is it takes the focus off of you and puts it on the community, right? And you see in that quote that guy gave as to why they didn't eat the seed collection and the food is it wasn't just the cause that they were sacrificing their lives for, it was the cause of the comrades around them that they were, it's Russia, the comrades that they were also fighting alongside. And so it's just this mindset of like, it's not about me. It's about something bigger than me, not just the cause, but the people around me. Where I could eat it and survive today, or I could not eat it and millions could survive later. It's probably kind of the thought process in that.
It was a good story. It was interesting, right? And it really drove home the point that if they didn't have that cause, right, then they would have just ate it
why not?
Themselves. There's no reason not to. Right? I'm hungry. There's stuff to eat right there. Let's get after it. But they didn't do that.
And in the same way that their cause took their focus off of themselves and onto something bigger than themselves, we have the same thing. This is where we can read that passage.
Philippians 3:18-20. For many of whom I have often told you and now tell you, even with tears, walk as enemies of the cross of Christ. Their end is destruction. Their God is their belly, and they glory in their shame, with minds set on earthly things. But our citizenship is in heaven, and from it we await a Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ. So there, and I think you mentioned it in the sermon too, that their God is their belly. The idea is, whatever it is that they feel like doing when they wake up in the morning is exactly what they do, right? They are, minds are set only on earthly things, only on temporal things that ultimately are passing away, that are not permanent. They're not eternal. They're not everlasting. Right? Versus those of us who are in Christ, right? We're thinking about the eternal. Right? We're thinking about heavenly things. We're thinking about Christ and advancing God's kingdom, even here, which does have eternal consequences.
We're setting our minds. So if they set their minds on earth, we're setting our minds on heaven. And in Colossians, kind of a similar verse, he says, "Don't set your mind on earthly things, but set your mind on higher things." And so just pull your focus off of yourself. It's not about you.
Yeah, that's
It's not
right.
about you. Stop focusing on yourself.
Yeah, quit it. Just stop.
Ignore that first point.
Yeah, right. It's like, yeah, third point nullifies the first point.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent work. No. So I'm glad too. You mentioned several things as an example that have been going on. One was Wu-Tang crackers. Is there a story there? Because it seemed oddly specific.
No, honestly, so that actually wasn't written in my notes. 95% of what I say on from the stage, I've thought through. Every now and then a thought will pop into my mind, and I'll just like swing blind.
Okay.
And
because I picked up on that. I'm like, okay, it sounds like. Well, first off, side note, yeah, going grocery shopping on an empty stomach is a terrible idea because everything sounds good. And
Yeah.
you overspend. And anyway.
and I normally don't do that. So when we go to Costco, for example, we'll usually eat before we go because we'll go around lunchtime. Lottie likes to get the hot dog there, so we'll go eat beforehand and then go through. And it's actually a great system. Hot dogs are cheap. They're good. Their pizza's really good. And now you're not hungry as you go walk through the aisles.
The bulk store.
The bulk store.
Like, I need all of these brownies.
Which, by the way, is a terrible place to experiment with food because you'll buy it, and if you don't like it, you're stuck with like 5 months supply of it.
That's right. You open the pantry, and you're like regretting all of your choices.
Yeah. And so, so that thought came to my mind of allowing your belly to dictate decisions. I'm like, well, we do that at the grocery store. And I couldn't think off the top of my head, okay, what's something that I've bought before that I didn't actually like? And so the first thing that came to my mind was crab ragoon. But I like crab ragoon. And then so...
Bad example. But
then my brain did a word association from crab ragoon to wontons, which you use to wrap up crab ragoon. So I was like, well, you buy wontons, and then you wonder why you bought them. And so it's, yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Sometimes you get on stage and your mind just starts racing and you just say the first thing that comes to your mind.
Yeah, I gotcha. It sounded almost like there was a story behind that. But.
No story. We had some friends over for Christmas, and we made crab ragoon, and you have to use little wontons to do it. And so we had like a whole like half pack of wontons left over, which outside of crab ragoon is pointless. It's just like little like raw bread.
It's worthless
things. Yeah. Anyways,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
No real greater story to the wontons.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Or even talking about the flavor of the day,
Yeah.
right? And being concerned with the Stanley Cups.
The Stanley Cups, man.
Zero idea what in the world is going on with that. I saw there was a run on Target.
Judah, you are our resident Gen Zer. What's going on with Stanley Cups?
I have no idea what those are.
You haven't even heard, man. He's a terrible cultural analyzer.
Sorry.
We need to call in an expert.
Yeah.
It sounds like.
So Stanley Cups are those like big thermal cups. They've been around for like 100 years or so.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Carhartt. So Carhartt has been around for a while, and it was like the workers' clothes. And then all of a sudden, it became like the trendy clothes.
Yeah.
What's that shirt brand? Supreme. So Supreme used to be like the generic brand at like Target.
Really?
Yeah, that you would just buy, and then all of a sudden became the premium brand that you're like spending like $100 on a sweatshirt. And it's like, what is going on? How like these guys are like the ultimate rebranders in the world. So Stanley is just the average worker's cup, right? And then out of nowhere, it's the trendy thing. And I don't know if they're actually selling for this much, if people are paying for them, but like hundreds to thousands of dollars.
Can you
online.
eBay it for us?
But I saw this video, and it was talking about it, and I think it was over the past 3 years, Stanley Cups have gone from being worth $75 million, like the company itself, to $750 million, like 10 times growth in just 3 years.
That is so weird.
It is.
So I've got a really old Stanley thermos. Like, it's green, and it was my grandpa's.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, like, been around for forever, right? You fill it up with coffee in the morning. We're going to go hunting, and he's able to drink coffee all day, basically. And so I saw the cups at Target. They're like pink and red, right? And it says Stanley on it. And it looks nothing like the old ones, right? And I'm like,
these cups were not designed for like soccer moms.
No, right.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and my wife, she likes that kind of cup. And like, I get that. Like, that's fine. Like, I don't want one, but the fact that you want one is great, I think. But what is it about these particular Stanley cups? Is it the color? Is it that was Target having a sale on them? Or
it's just a trendy thing, and there's like videos of like a line going out the door of people lined up to get those cups before they sold out.
And the kicker is it's like the exact same cup. Like Sam has like the same thing. It's just not Stanley brand. Like it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So I don't get it. I don't get it at all. In the least,
or it's like the thermos. You know, we've talked about this before with coffee cups. It's like the really good coffee, like thermoses. What's their names? Yeti. Yeah, Yeti and Arctic and whatnot.
That's the knockoff.
Oh, is that the knockoff one? Oh, my bad.
That's the original knockoff.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, well, Yeti. Let's go with Yeti.
That's it right there.
You know, it'll keep your coffee warm for 10 hours. Who needs their coffee warm for 10 hours? Like, there's like a small section of the population that really actually needs that level of like optimization and quality. The vast majority of us need our coffee to last an hour.
Yeah.
We're good.
And let's be clear about Yetis. The quality is so good, it will keep your coffee hot. Not warm, hot for hours. Like you can't even drink it.
Yeah.
You almost have to drop in some ice cubes.
Yeah.
If you want to drink it out of that Yeti, right? Out of the insulated cups. It's like, what's like, I don't get it. That also doesn't make sense to me.
Absolutely.
But Yetis are cool. Like, I like Yetis. Like, so maybe this is, you know, on the other side. Now I have a hard time, like the coolers, right? It's like, oh, dude, those are cool. And by the way, the guys who created Yeti, like the guys who designed it and came up with it, I think if I remember right, they actually went to Texas Tech, which is where I went to school. So guns up, wreck 'em. So it's like, oh man, I always wanted kind of one of those Yetis, but it's like, dude, I can't pay $300-400 for a cooler. I just can't. Like, they're really cool. I can't bring myself to do it. And then, not that, you know, several months ago, I think it was in the summer, Sam actually won a Yeti cooler at work. And it was like, and it's red, and that's the color that, you know, my truck is. So it goes with my truck. So that's where it rides around with me sometimes. And so it's awesome. So maybe I do get it more than, maybe not the Stanley
Maybe
Cup
you're a
thing,
trendy woman. I don't know.
Maybe I am.
Yeah. Did you find anything?
I did find Stanley Dining 40-ounce tumblers for like $80 to $200.
Yeah, which is about 10 times more than what it should be now.
Oh yeah.
I don't want to try. I like quality. I really do. I am very much a quality over quantity. But there's difference between quality and trendy.
Yeah.
And this is more of a trendy thing than a quality thing. And so, anyways, yeah. So don't focus on trendy things. Or, I mean, if you want to, it's fine. You spend money how you want.
Yeah, it's
I don't
fine.
care. I spend my money on coffee stuff.
But is being the most trendy really like our end all be all, right? That's what we're getting.
And so it's the thing of like, there's certainly like blessings in life that you can enjoy. That's fine. But it's like, that's not my focus, right? Like that's not my purpose in life, is those things. And you may say like, my purpose in life isn't those things. But it's like, okay, what do you spend all your time doing though?
Right.
Is it, if your time is like 90% like sucked up into these things, then it may not be like a conscious like, oh, this is my purpose in life. But like, if you're looking at what you're doing, that's what you're spending all your time doing. And so it's like, practically speaking, it is your purpose in life right now. Mm-hmm. And so it's just making sure that our focus isn't getting shifted onto fleeting things. Enjoy them, just don't make it your sole focus in life.
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
Well, maybe we should have a challenge at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe for any of the ladies that are listening, that might happen to be listening, Yeah, if you have one of those new Stanley Cups, take a selfie with it and then post it in the comments, and we'll see.
Or
who all
better
has the
yet,
Stanley
if
Cup.
someone can explain to me what happened as to why Stanley Cups are so popular, please let me know. Someone comment that down below. But anyways, we've been talking about it for a while. We should probably move on. Focus
Yes.
on yourself and what you need to do today and not tomorrow, and God's kingdom and not fleeting things. Right?
Yes.
Cool. All right. It is time for the bad doctrine of the week.
It's the bad doctrine of the week.
All right. Bad doctrine of the week this week. It's a Daily Wire article.
Okay.
It's actually been a minute since this happened. Megan Rapinoe, the U.S. women's national team soccer star, who's a pretty outspoken individual.
She's the one with the funny color hair, right?
Pink.
Okay,
Pink
yeah.
hair.
Okay.
Yes. So she's retired from playing soccer recently, and her last game she was injured, like just a few minutes into the game, and so the headline reads, Rapinoe says injury in her last game is proof that God does not exist.
Cool.
This one's a little bit of a softball one, but I saw that. I'm like, I have lots of thoughts. So let me read some
Does
of
she
it.
explain, her thought process?
Yeah, so after apparently tearing her Achilles tendon in the last game of her professional career, U.S. soccer star declared that the injury was proof that God does not exist. So she injured herself in the 3rd minute of the game, and she says, I'm not a religious person or anything, and if there was a God, this is proof that there isn't. This is messed up, but she doesn't say messed up. A bit of an expletive there. And she also added, for sure I tore my Achilles, describing the moment of injury as a huge pop. That was basically the gist of the point, at least surrounding her this new evidence that she has that God doesn't.
So it's
exist.
because something bad happened to her,
Yes,
God doesn't exist.
basically, yep.
It's a pretty bold claim.
It is a bold claim.
It's one of those ones that sometimes when people make theological or even philosophical claims like that, I want them to expand a little bit more. Like please, help me understand how you got from point A to point B, but usually there's not any explanation to it, which makes me just have to come up with my own explanation as to why.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot there. Doesn't look like she expanded on that very much, but from her perspective, why would you? I mean, she's come to this conclusion.
So, okay, you have any thoughts?
I have a lot of thoughts. First off, the fact that she's here in the last game of her career, and she's going to retire, and she gets hurt, right? Pops her Achilles tendon, and she's done, right? I understand and get the frustration and the disappointment that must be there. Like, hey, this is my last game. I'm going to enjoy it, and then you get injured just a few minutes in, and you're basically she's retiring almost a full game before she wanted to. Right? I get that. I get that would have been disappointing, but to make the jump to where. Because this happened to me, God doesn't exist. Really, there's some pretty fundamental and underlying assumptions that she's making when she says that, right? I am entitled to finish this particular game because it's my last, because God owes this to me, right? If there is a God, then He owes this to me. And I think that's a wrong fundamental assumption to have. So. The idea that really God owes us anything is outlandish and doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, and there's kind of some arbitrary lines being drawn on so let's say they lost the game, something bad happened to her. It's so that's acceptable, but having an injury isn't acceptable. So let's say this. Let's say I decide to go skydiving, which I would never do.
Me neither.
Because whenever I filled out my life insurance policy, they asked me, do you go skydiving? And if I answered yes, my policy would have went up.
That tells you just about all you need to know right there.
Yeah, insurance companies don't work off of maybe or maybe not. They work off statistics. And if they're asking that question, then that means that there's a statistical probability of a higher chance of injury. Anyways, so let's say I go skydiving and then something happens and I blame God. Okay, well, God, why did you cause my parachute not to open, right? Or why didn't you stop my parachute from malfunctioning? And
Is this while you're standing before God because you died?
Yeah. Right. The better question would be, why are you putting yourself in harm's way and then expecting God to like bail you out of your decisions? Obviously she wasn't like doing something to that extent, but she's playing a game, right? Like, and any time you do anything, like there's an element of risk to it. And she was probably at higher risk for tearing her Achilles heel than me, right? Because I don't run.
Yeah.
But anyways, it's one of those things of like, it's like if I go play football and then get injured, am I then going to blame God for being injured? Right? I'm kind of putting myself in a higher statistical category of being injured and then expecting God to bail me out. Does that kind of make sense? That's just kind of one thought of it. This also gets like translated to like our dumb decisions in life.
Yeah.
Like if you're being promiscuous before being married and then you get pregnant. It's like, God, why did you do this to me? Well, I don't know if God did that to you, or maybe it's your decisions that kind of led you to that. And then now, why is it on God to bail you out of your decisions, right? And so that's just kind of one way that my mind went to it.
Yeah, and she, I think it's, I think the fact that she goes, I mean, and she even admitted, I'm not a religious person or anything.
Yeah.
It's like, but this is definite sure proof right here.
It's confirmation bias.
Yeah, that's right. It's like, okay, stop the presses, everybody. Stop the presses. This, soccer player here at this point in time in the current year, I guess this has been in 23. It was an article from back in November. But here in 2023, we now have definitive proof, right? Stop the presses because her Achilles tendon popped.
Yeah, and honestly, one might say, so this lady has been in the press before.
Oh, yeah. She's very
over the past couple of years. Yeah, she's very vocal, very like counterculture, and
she's a little abrasive.
Yeah, and one might speculate: am I trying to be, what's the word? Am I trying to be a little bit more like shock and awe in my language to get back in the press?
Oh, yeah, it could be.
I don't know. Because, like, if someone's asking a question, like, oh, man, you got injured out there. Can you tell us what you thought? I don't think anyone is expecting there to be a link between that and God doesn't exist, right? That's a pretty big leap to make. And so, but if you're an atheist with a axe to grind and likes being in the spotlight, I'm knocking out tons of birds with this one stone here.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyways, that's a little bit cynical of me to think that way, but
it could be. We don't know.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
I would say this probably doesn't mean it's proof that God doesn't exist. That's probably a leap. Yeah.
I agree.
Judah, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, if my Achilles heel breaks, then it's God's fault.
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
No, it's not God's fault because God's not there.
Right. That's what I meant.
It'd be tough to blame somebody that you claim doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting.
Anyways, yeah. Fun times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, that one was pretty straightforward, pretty cut and dry, but
pretty straightforward.
it's there.
Yeah.
And people are interesting.
Yeah. To pull real quickly, just give a little bit of biblical context. God made the world perfect. So if you were to say, if God was real, he wouldn't create a world with suffering in it. Well, that's exactly what God did. He didn't create a world with suffering in it. Sin brought suffering into the world. And so if you look at if you want to see a world that God created, look pre-fall. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. No sin, no death, no suffering, just Adam and Eve eating fruit, right?
Yep.
And sin is what brought suffering into the world, death into the world.
Conflict.
Our bones and our tendons no longer hold up the way that they're supposed to hold up. They will degrade over time because of sin entering the world. And so that's, if you're a person that's like, well, like, why is there pain? Why do we have suffering in that? It's because of sin. And it's to point us to things aren't right in the world. Ironically, her body decaying should more open her eyes to, I'm going to die, right? And it should make her more introspective as to, okay, something's not right in the world. Why is that the case? Rather than saying something's not right in the world. Well, God's not real.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
It's like Romans 1.
Yep.
Yep. That's it.
Cool. All right. Let us know what you
Fun.
think. Have you ever torn your Achilles heel and then sworn off God for the rest of your life? I don't know. Anyways, we love to hear from you. Anything that you have from today, let us know in the comments. We do read them, even if we don't respond to them always. We do read them, and we enjoy reading them. But like, subscribe, comment. Judah forgot to do his job.
I bet.
He's
But
still
anyways,
recovering from illness.
Yeah.
We can't put that on him.
yeah. Anyways, we'll see you next week.